We substituted our heroin and Xanax addiction with nicotine.
It's funny though, with your Xanax addiction, didn't you end up finding out that there was like no Xanax in your blood? Wow, this vape is terrible. What the fuck is that?
Yes, I did figure out it wasn't Xanax because it didn't show up on my blood work when I got my lovely DUIs. So in the years of 2020 and 2021, I'm assuming it's fentanyl.
Yeah.
You know, like it's out here on these streets.
Fentanyl.
It's not safe for anybody doing drugs. They're like, now it's to the point where it's like fentanyl's in weed.
Yeah, straight up. People fucking dying smoking weed, dying fucking doing cocaine. Like, I mean, not that people weren't dying doing cocaine before, but dying doing much smaller amounts. There's even the cartels, particularly the Sinaloa cartel, likes to put like very small amounts of fentanyl in their meth, because on top of the fact that meth is already one of the most intense drugs in terms of like the amount of dopamine that it releases, like, oh, let's stick a synthetic opioid in there so that people get like physically reliant on it as well. But then there's no quality control because like it's a fucking cartel, so like you never know what you're gonna get. It's like, oh, am I gonna fucking do this meth and go to space, or I'm gonna do this meth and go to the grave? Like, I have no fucking idea. It's just the reality of the situation.
Sadly, it
and
is.
It's mind-boggling. I mean, fentanyl is something that, sure, it can be used to great effect in hospitals and things like that, but then courtesy of the insane amount of resources that the cartels have, they've managed to build the laboratories necessary to synthesize it, and it's actually cheaper and easier for them now with that technology to synthesize fentanyl than it is for them to make heroin. And that's part of why it's getting pushed as hard as it is, because it's cheaper, it's more effective, it's stronger, people seem to love it. I loved it. I'm lucky to be alive because of that fact, but...
Especially not knowing, in the midst of like addiction, not knowing about fentanyl. It was nothing that was talked about or that I ever came across, like, oh, this is fentanyl, I could kill you. Just like taking it unknowingly, that's pretty fucking scary.
It is scary. I was, I guess, blessed with the fact that I don't think I ever took it unknowingly. I actually used to seek that stuff out. But when I started with opiates was right around, like right before the government started to crack down really hard on like pharmaceutical opiates. So like oxycodone, which are like the little blue pills, 30 milligrams of oxycodone, but without the acetaminophen in it that like Percocet has. And so I started doing just those pills. Nowadays, if you buy those pills on the street, they are almost 100% guaranteed to be fake pressed fentanyl pills. But very quickly, like once I realized that heroin was cheaper and stronger, I moved from oxycodone to heroin. And then like I discovered that fentanyl is like a lot more effective than heroin. And it was like, oh, okay, let's move on to that. And I mean, I've had my overdoses, and thank God that I'm still alive and have a fucking brain. And I don't really understand how that's even, like, how that's possible. There's no human reason for me to have a brain.
There isn't.
Like, God, I hope my parents never watch this podcast. I remember several times, like, because I would just lock myself in my room, and whether or not my father was home when I lived with him, like, you know, I would be locked in there, and then I would, like, shoot up and, like, wake up in the morning with, like, the needle still hanging out of my arm, and, like, only ever having put, like, a third of it into my veins, and, like, having overdosed at that point, and waking up with my head down like this, like, obviously not really breathing for, like, 8 hours, and not be able to pick my head up, and, like, as soon as I picked it up enough to take in a breath, having a seizure. And I discovered this in treatment, speaking to one of the doctors, that, like, when you don't have oxygen to your brain for a period of time and you take that first breath, you're going to have a seizure. It's just one of the effects of it. So, like, there were at least 3 times that happened to me, and, like, there was nobody around to Narcan me. There's no reason for me to be alive and have my mental faculties, to the point that, like, when I got to treatment, I was thoroughly convinced that it made a lot more sense that I was either dead or in a medical coma than that I am in California and sober. And sometimes I still think that. I'm like, what the fuck is my life? Like, what is going on here? Like, I don't... It still
dramatic
doesn't really...
shit. Yeah, it doesn't
feel really real. Make sense to me. It's very surreal, and I've just kind of come to accept it, because, like, even if I am in a medical coma, I feel like the only way for me to ever get out of that is by doing right in whatever this is. So whether this is life or like a fucking comatose dream, I'm still gonna try to do right, and And believe me, I don't do perfectly with that. Sometimes I'm a piece of shit, but that's fine.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's a human experience.
We're not perfect.
No.
There's that striving for perfection, but never. The point is to never reach it.
Yeah, it's right.
I think so.
Yeah, like life is just a practice, and practice kind of inherently implies imperfection. But I think there's like beauty to mistakes, and there's beauty to just being alive and being human. Like I'm not gonna like okay, for like the last year, it's been like this constant strive, like getting involved in a 12-step program and following people's suggestions and all these things. There's this constant striving to like, oh, let me be this A+ student. And it's taken me about a year to get to the point where I'm like, okay, maybe I'm being disingenuous. Like maybe that, like, why am I striving to be this perfect being when the reality of the situation is that like humans are perfectly imperfect. It's our imperfections that lead us to grow. It's our imperfections that lead us to change. It's only through like the experience of being alive, like the painful experience, that we learn to grow and change.
It's our imperfections that make us us.
Yeah, literally.
You know? Like, imagine if you were all the same.
That would fucking suck.
Everything would be boring
like
and
normal
bland.
people. Who wants to be normal? What is normal?
Exactly.
Like, I don't want to be normal. Like, I want to be fucking weird, because that's who I am.
Yeah.
Like, but, so to take this back, because I see how this can circle back right now, like, to stigmas. Like, okay, I guess I have that own stigma for myself. These own self-projected expectations of, like, I must be perfect. Of, like, okay, like I know I've got a decent brain, decent intelligence, a decent handle on words, despite the fact that this interview is making me look like a liar when it comes to that. Like intellectualization is my defense. It's how I had some amount of value, because like in elementary school, in high school, and all those things, it was never like, oh, I have to sit down and study to ace a test. It's like I had my 10th grade history teacher used to bitch at me all the time for sleeping in his class. And then about halfway through the year, he stopped. And at the end of the year, he looked at me and he was like, do you want to know why I stopped yelling at you when you slept in my class? And I was like, what? And he was like, well, I realized several things. He's like, first, I realized that even though you were always asleep, you were still getting the best grades in the class. And then I realized that you were sleeping on your book and you must be learning through osmosis. And I was okay with that. I was like, thanks, Mr. Marks. I appreciate it. Although, weird story. So Mr. Marks' twin brother was my pediatrician. So it was really weird, like the last time that I went to that doctor to get like a physical checkup, and like Mr. Marks' brother had just started working at this like physician's office, and I'm like, why is my history teacher playing with my genitals right now? This is very, very strange. It was an uncomfortable situation, but it is what it is. So that's there's a little story you've never heard from my past before. But yeah, so intellectualization was like my defense. It's how I had some kind of value. I was always the teacher's pet, always getting really good grades, always really involved in science and literature and history and like all these things, because I felt some kind of value in that. And I think a lot of that came from like, that's like some family values. Like, I have a whole lot of very successful and very intelligent and very driven people in my family. And then the one of them whom I looked up to chiefly would be my grandfather, who he was one of the founding members of the New Jersey Historical Society, and he fought in World War II. And then like for him, like by the time he was like, I don't know, 87, 88, maybe even 90, like the internet came around. And to him, that was the best thing in the whole fucking world. Like he was the first one in my family to graduate high school, and he just loved knowledge. He loved it. So once the internet came out and he was like, oh my God, I have the entirety of human knowledge at my fingertips. Like, he had these 2 bookshelves that were just full of alphanumerically ordered binders full of information about everything. And I mean, like,
is this where you got all the information?
This is where I got a lot of my information, yes. Like, when we were kids, my grandfather would send my sister and I these manila folders, like, you know, the manila envelopes. One of them was like 35 pages on the history of salves and ointments. Just like showed up in the mail one day. And they're all like, this is not like Wikipedia articles. This is like Encyclopedia Britannica articles and like things from the Library of Congress and like all this stuff. And he just developed this massive library of just information about fucking everything, because like he was like, knowledge is power. And I would like read fiction books as a kid, and he was like, why the fuck are you like, I hope you realize truth is so much weirder than fiction, and there's so much cool shit in reality that like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, shut up, Grandpa. You're like 90. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I really wish I had listened to him at an earlier age. I really, really do. But I didn't. But he passed a lot of things on to me.
Wait, so over time, you kind of just started gaining like a love for like
For
knowing
knowledge.
things and knowledge
Yeah.
and like the truth or whatever.
I don't even know that it was over time. As a child, when I was 3, I took apart the kitchen sink with a missized plastic toy wrench, but I was 3, so I was not smart enough to turn off the water first. So that was fun when I flooded the kitchen and in a, like 180-ish year old farmhouse at like 3 years old and like taking apart like locks, and I just always had that drive to figure out how things work. And that extends itself to like people. Like I love conversing with people. I love getting to know people because I love knowing, like I love figuring out people's motives and what makes them tick. And to be honest, that gets me in trouble sometimes because people don't like it when you figure them out, or when you think you figured them out but haven't. But like it's cool because I like to know how things work. It's why I got into working on cars, like because it was easy for me in my addiction to just be like, oh, okay, like this is cool. Like I just get to take this shit apart and put it back together. Like cool, let's do some meth and some heroin and get on this shit. Like, this would be fucking great. It's just, I don't know, knowledge is just, I get really excited about learning things about like just about anything, and it's just how I am. And yeah.
Did you start placing like these expectations on people from like, say, like knowing too much? Were you like lacking maybe like
100%.
humility? Like, dude, why are you?
Yeah, no, that's always been one of my biggest things is like, I'm not the greatest at communication and inflection in things. So like sometimes I will try to come off as like caring and loving, and the inflection in my voice apparently comes off as like a condescending douche, and I really try not to be that way. But it's like I don't try to present myself as pedantic and as if I know more than people. I just really like knowledge. But the side effect of that is that a lot of people either get intimidated or seem to think that I think that I'm better than them. And for the longest time, I was like, what? No, I don't think I'm better than you. But then looking back at it, considering like I placed value in myself based upon my academic performance and my intellectual performance, I guess there was kind of that, my own stigma against other people of like, why aren't your values aligned with mine? Like, why doesn't performing well in school matter to the jocks? Why does like I thought I was justified and right in the ways that I viewed the world. Whereas with other people, I was like, what? You're fucking dumb. Like, why would I waste my time with you? And it's a very judgmental thing to do. But it still crops up today. Sometimes I look at people and I'm like, can you just nod? Like, please.
I'm guilty of it.
You are a waste of carbon. But like, that's extremely judgmental. And like, I try to not be that way now. Like, I recognize that I'm certainly no better than anybody else. But that's just for the longest time been that. So yeah, it's I've come to realize that like maybe trying to be perfect in recovery, trying to be perfect in my job, trying to be perfect in the way I present myself to other people is so disingenuous and not human, and like there's no joy in that whatsoever. There's a lot of freedom and a lot of joy and a lot more confidence that just comes from being like, okay, yeah, this is who I am. These are the ways that I'm gonna act out and misbehave, and like that's just where I'm at right now, and like fuck y'all, you're gonna have to accept it because of like there's that suddenly like it just hit me, like even just like, I mean, it hits in waves, but it's like, okay, this is just kind of who I am, and like it's like there's something so much more cathartic about just living life.
Yes.
Not like trying to live up to other people's expectations, but just being like, you know what, I'm literally just gonna live.
Yeah.
Like,
if I keep worrying about these stigmas or judgment and what people think of me, how people are currently perceiving me, I'm not ever going to live.
Right. And actually, I'm realizing in this moment, in this conversation, that like, okay, I've always struggled with the concept of what do I want to do with my life, right? Because like, what do I want to do? I enjoy just about every academic subject. I enjoy a lot of different things. But then it leads to like this level of indifference where I'm like, hey, like, I don't really know what I want to do, so why don't you tell me what I want to do? And now I'm realizing that like maybe if I just like live and actually do what I want, then I'll actually figure out what I want. Like that's the only way this is gonna happen. I don't just.
I would do the same thing. I couldn't make a choice or a decision for myself for like like my whole
I know.
for like my whole life, and like just do what's in front of you. Do like what you feel inside, like what your intuition is saying.
Yeah.
Like what's driving you? What do you have passion for? Like that's what I'm finding today.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. It really, really is.
Yeah.
I'm more than a little bit envious. I'm not gonna lie. Because like I'm trying to do the same thing, and I know I really love like helping people, and I really love like teaching people, but like it's difficult to do like there are other things that come along with that, at least in like my job, like all of the bureaucratic bullshit. But it's like all of that is fine because it allows me to do the things that I am passionate about. But now I need to like take that and turn it into like, okay, how do I incorporate more of the things that I'm passionate about? How do I incorporate like talking to people and trying to educate people and inspire people versus just like sitting around and I mean being a technician in a treatment center, like passing medications or like I don't know, like doing vitals and all that stuff. Like it's fine. It's a means to an end. It's like the passion comes in like when I get to sit down and like talk to people and like inspire people and like
you plant
plucking
that
a little
seed
piece of my soul out and
trying
to give it to them, because like that's what people did for me. Like that it was, if not for other people being like, hey, bearing their soul to me and the, you know, the depths of where their life had brought them to, and then like the highs that their life had gotten to now, like I don't think I ever would have gotten honest with myself to the point that I was, because that was another stigma that I held against myself, was like I already texted you a picture of me and my addiction. I would love for you to throw it in here somewhere, because like I had this conception of myself that because I was wearing a button-down shirt that I looked fine. Forget about the fact that I hadn't showered in a month and picked my face apart and that my teeth were black and rotten and falling out of my fucking head. Like, no, I look fine because, like, you know, there's this whole bondage of self thing where like, oh, this is my conception of what somebody should look like, and like never looking in the mirror to recognize what I actually looked like. Even if I had, I probably would have been blind to the truth of it anyway.
Definitely.
I think our own imagination, our own conceptions of what our sense of self is more powerful than our eyesight sometimes. Like, it's true.
It really is.
Yes.
That goes for me. Like recently, I've been relating that to like the way my body looks. So I look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, holy shit, girl, you need to lose some weight. And like I'm like genuinely feeling shit about myself. Like I truly believe I'm fat, right? And I did a photo shoot the other day, and like I'm like, yo, wait, hold on. I don't remember looking like that. I just looked in the mirror like 2 days ago. It's just our brains deceive us and like our true beliefs.
Yeah. It's so difficult to see the truth about ourselves sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think my way around that is that like I frequently make the comment, especially when it comes to getting haircuts or the way I'm dressed and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, bitch, I don't have to look at myself all day. Like, why do I care what I look like? Like, literally, I'm like, I like actually don't have to look at myself. Like, why do I care?
Isn't it crazy that we're never gonna really be able to look at ourselves?
It is fucking wild, because even if we look in a mirror, like our ears are backwards and it's distorted and light gets refracted, and like it's the same thing as like hearing your own voice after it's recorded. You're like, wait, is that really what I sound like?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like that.
What I sound like to other people? Is that what I look like? Like,
yeah,
it's weird.
I wonder where like this caring so much about how we're perceived comes from, like the root core of it.
I think it comes from external validation. I think it comes from the concept of when you're a child and people go, oh, I'm so proud of you, or oh, you're so handsome, and all these things, instead of like the concept of like, hey, I hope you're proud of yourself. Like that and we're all externally motivated in life, I think, today, and I don't think that's really a healthy thing, because we chase that, and that's such a fleeting, immediate gratification kind of thing that like where's the pride in ourselves? Where's the drive from within ourselves? Because we're just like, oh, I want this person to accept me. And it also goes, I think, to just the way that standardized testing is in schools and things like that. Like, oh, here's the same format for everybody, and you must ace this, and blah blah blah. And not that I had an issue with that, but it built in me this this reliance upon, oh, if I do well at this, these people will accept me. And I was never really concerned with like, okay, well, I never even really thought about what do I want to accept about myself. But you were speaking of body image and things like that. Like, yeah, absolutely. I think everybody has those insecurities and those things about their body that they don't like, that they don't accept. And like, this is my only body. I'm going to have to accept this. I'm going to have, like, whether or not I like it, it's the one that I've got.
Yeah.
And I'm not about to go waste a bunch of money on like plastic surgery or some bullshit anyway. So like, what the fuck? Like this, it is what it is. And thankfully, I think people come in our lives for reasons like that. Like, there are people who are just so accepting and so validating. And like, although I don't really enjoy like relying on external validation, sometimes it's very gratifying to just have somebody be like, hey, you know, like you're awesome the way you are. And it's like, but am I really though? Like,
I don't believe so.
And there's that part of me that likes to, that kind of enjoys having the self-judgment and the stigma against myself.
Why?
And things, because like I've always viewed it as like, okay, like if it pushes me to be better.
To an extent.
To an extent, but it's not the healthy way to get there.
Yeah.
Like, there is a healthier, and I haven't figured that one out yet. When I do, I will let you know. But like,
so how are you on a day-to-day basis trying to actively step out of the stigma, like break it?
Break the stigma of the things that I've been stigmatized with. I go with addiction on that one because that's probably the biggest one. Well, I mean, also like my teeth, like that was kind of cool being able to get new teeth since they're all fucking fake. It's great. It's fucking fantastic. I can eat a steak now. It's wonderful.
Dude, steak?
Bro, that Brazilian steakhouse the other day.
Yeah, they're so good.
So fucking good. I'm glad you put down your vegetarianism for a minute
too.
for that one, dude. That was fucking awesome. So how do I break out of it? You know, I think I'm going to challenge that concept. I don't think I am trying to break out of it.
Ooh, why?
Because I think it has to do with my perception of it versus being like, oh, this is a stigma and I don't want to be associated with that stigma. It's like, okay, you know what? This thing that is being stigmatized, being drug addiction, being like, you know, heroin addiction, fentanyl addiction, meth, sticking needles in my arm, like whatever, the whole way that I was living for the better part of 10 years, it's like, okay, now that is a very empowering thing. I recognize that there are people who are uncomfortable with it in this world. I recognize that there are, you know, people in society who look down on these things, but like, fuck that. It made me who I am. The only reason I have any form of confidence today is because of these experiences that I had. So let them stigmatize me, and maybe it's a little bit
it's about owning it and embracing it instead of being like, oh
the
fuck,
darker sides of it. Like, okay, like let it be stigmatized and let me break that stigma. Not to break out of it, but let me be a part of breaking that stigma. Like and that's what this whole thing, this fuck the stigma thing is about. It's not like, don't stigmatize me. It's like, let's break the whole fucking stigma. Let's challenge the entire, like the entire world's conception of what these things are that are being stigmatized. We need to recognize that all of these things that are so, like, people are only stigmatizing these because they're afraid of them.
Yeah, they don't understand it.
They don't understand, they're afraid, and like, if we don't understand something, if it's unfamiliar to us, we're scared. We shy away from it.
Yeah,
but like, fuck that. Like, we need to realize that these things are superpowers. Not sticking a needle in your arm, but the reasons why we do that. We feel more deeply as addicts, as alcoholics, and I'm not even going to say that. No, I think it's the human condition. I think addiction has its roots in the human condition, and those people who are pushed to the extent of drugs and alcohol fucking up their lives are lucky, because we've got, and I'm not going to turn this thing into something about like AA or NA, but like, we've got a solution laid out for us. But then the people whose internal condition, the attempt to escape from the feelings inside that we all want to kill, the people who just rely on social media for that, who rely on escapism by reading books and overeating and over exercising and drinking too much coffee and whatever it might be, whatever their escape is for that brief moment of immediate gratification, that brief moment of relief, if it's not destroying their lives in such a way that they're driven to have to get away from it, then they're kind of fucked.
Yeah,
I almost feel bad for them. I'm like, bro, like, I know, like, I did a lot of shitty things in my life.
I do see what you're saying, though. With addicts and alcoholics, it's so fucking dangerous and can progress so quickly that, like, you have to make a change
It's
quick,
like
or
we're either driven to the grave
and it's
or
so
we're driven to
it's
a
pretty
solution.
visible to others, and like
Yeah. And then,
eventually at some point to yourself, and then like other things with like social media addiction and eating, it can be harder to break out of.
yeah, because it's more socially acceptable, and there's, you know, there's not that drive from the outside, and there's not that sudden risk of like, hey, if you keep doing this, you're gonna fucking die. Not that that was ever enough to like push me to get sober anyway.
Yeah.
But like, there isn't that heavy of consequences for a lot of these things where these people end up just being fucking miserable, and I'm like, I am so sorry for you. But like these abilities to feel in the way that we do, like these feelings that drive us to use, to drink, to like try to escape from life, they can be redirected. They can be put into something more powerful than that. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Like all of these things that are stigmatized, and it even goes to like, okay, like I'm going to use prostitution as an example. Like that is heavily stigmatized. It's illegal in a large portion of the world, but like, and it really, really sucks for the people who are like pushed to that point, who absolutely have to, they have no other choice, and from their addiction and things like that. But then there's the other side of it, the people who just own themselves to that, like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and like, fuck y'all. And like there's that's kind of empowering. It's kind of like, you know what, I kind of respect that.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, I think stigmas just come from fear, and we're afraid as a society, and like I don't even necessarily want to like break out of the stigma. I just want to break the stigma, like break people's conceptions of like, oh, whatever your fucking rigid conceptions of what I am and who I can be are, fuck them. Like, yeah, that's...
Fuck yeah. We're breaking the stigma. Embracing the stigma.
That too. Breaking and embracing. Like, okay, like, judge me because I'm an addict. Judge me because I lost all my teeth. Yeah, fuck up my vape. Okay. No, yeah, it's... I think all of this can be very empowering, but that's I think one of the most important things in life is perspective. Whether or not we're going to play the victim, whether or not we're going to be like, oh, people are judging me, oh, what does this person think of me, or whether we're going to be like, you know what, like nothing on the outside is my problem. Like
it's all you.
Other than the way that
you're your own problem.
100%. Believe me, I know I'm my own problem. I know that very well. So do you.
Yes, definitely.
That's a conversation for a time when we're not on camera.
One of the things I did want to talk about with you is men objectifying women.
Of course you do. Okay, let's go down that rabbit hole.
All right. Okay, I'll put out there first. I'm like one of the homies. That's kind of how sometimes I behave in like, say like a situation with men and we're talking about women. Like I'm like, yeah, 100%. Like I'm agreeing with them. Like I'm like the homie that you can talk to girls with.
Yeah.
So it's like, then I reflect.
And you're like, man, am I objectifying these people?
I'm kind of an asshole. I'm objectifying women.
I am definitely.
It's just like, why don't we talk about guys and how like nice of an ass they have?
I mean, you can talk about my ass all day. I don't mind. Like, I think it's unfortunately a natural part of being human.
You think? How? What? Where? What?
I mean, because sexuality is a natural part of... God, that was a very controversial statement on my part, wasn't it? I think sexuality and sexualization is natural for humans to do. I also think that there is an acceptable way and an unacceptable way to do it. I mean... Like, we can think about robbing a bank. We just can't rob the fucking bank. I mean, we can, but there's going to be consequences for it. Like...
I see what you mean by it being nature.
But like, also, like, what separates us from, like, what is the difference between man and beast? Like, if we're just going to go follow our instincts, like, isn't that what separates us from being an animal, is our ability to control our baser instincts? But, like, as much as we can control the things that we say and maybe not look at a girl and be like, oh, damn, or, like, maybe not...
I think it's just about the respect.
Right.
A woman should be able to leave her house and like not feel scared.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's what I like. But by the same token, I don't think we can control our thoughts. Like,
you can't control our thoughts.
I'm not gonna like walk up to a bitch and be like, "Hey, let's go."
Bitch? Whoa.
I'm not gonna
This is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about.
I'm not gonna walk up to a girl. Look. I'm not gonna walk up to a girl and be like, "Hey, let's go fuck." Like, or like just like blatantly be like, "Hey, I want to fuck you." But like, by the same token, like, if the thoughts crop up in my head, they're going to crop up. But like, and I feel bad sometimes even when the thoughts crop up. And then there are other times if I have a conversation with a close friend, like you, actually, since you're the homie.
I am the homie.
Like, we do that all the time, but then we're like, oh shit. Like, maybe we should not just be viewing this person as a piece of meat, but like, we're still just having an human experience, and like, it's an interesting conversation to have at the time. And like, of course, like, we are human beings, we are sexual beings, it's going to happen. But I think the issue arises when we project that vocally or through actions and things like that. Like, we need to have respect for other people's boundaries, whether or not they've clearly defined them to us. We don't need to know a person personally in order to respect the fact that this is a human. They have their own lives. There's an emotion called sonder. Sonder. And basically what sonder is this sudden and vivid realization that everybody has a life just as intricate as your own, that they're living all of the time despite you being unaware of it. So like, the hot girl walking down the street, when you're like, oh, that girl has a nice ass, like, that's fine. Like, you're not going to be able to stop that thought necessarily, but like, you don't need to project it outwards. You don't know what that girl is going through. You don't know, maybe that girl has a beautiful family going on, and maybe she's very driven in her professional life. Like, we're going to have these thoughts, but like, we need to have respect for the fact that this person has their own life as intricate as our own, and we know absolutely nothing about it. So I hate that this is going on the internet. People are going to hate me after all this. I don't know, because there's the part of me that just wants to be like, yeah, like, I'm human. Like, yeah, those thoughts are going to happen. And there's the other part of me that wants to be like, I need to respect this person, because like, typically, like, in my own protagonist kind of way, I like to think that I am on, the same side as women.
Yeah.
I really do. Like, I'm all for, like, feminism and women's rights and all these things. And I know it's kind of morphed in the past few years from when my original conception of what that means came to be, because that was like in the early 2000s when the whole feminist movement really came into being. And I was like, well, fuck yeah, like, women are just as, like, women are, if not better than, at least equivalent to men. And honestly, I think women are probably better than guys, like, realistically.
Yes. Definitely.
But part of that is also a little bit sexist, because I'm like, duh, they're nicer to look at. But like,
I see. It's nonstop. We can't get out of this. No, yeah, we can.
It is.
Do you think we can?
Do you think you can? I think we can limit it to the times that it's appropriate and to the people with whom it's appropriate. But then the question of what is appropriate comes along, because there's professional ethics and then there's morals, and which is more important. And sometimes they align and sometimes they do not. And
it's a pickle, dude. We're in a pickle.
It is a pickle.
Thank you, Tristan, for this experience.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. I hope I said something halfway decent. And I hope you leave out the entirety of that last part about objectifying women. And
I'll think about it.